Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari ISKCON Guruvinda Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Shikoda Nitai Mahaprabhu Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi. Hari. Is it? Are we reading from Prabhupada Lila Amrita? So, no. Okay, thanks. Reading from Shri Prabhupada Lila Amrita, chapter entitled "In Every Town and Village." But as Prabhupada unfolded his palms for the Pandal festival, the devotees doubted. How could they ever raise the money? How could they erect such a huge tent? Where would they get so much food? And who would cook it? Prabhupada seemed amused at their doubts. You're all Americans, he says, so what is the use of being American unless you can do something wonderful? A Bombay Pandal, Prabhupada said, would be the perfect way to link America's ingenuity with India's spirituality. He gave the example of a blind man and a lame man. Although separately they are helpless, by cooperating, the blind man carrying the lame man on his shoulders and the lame man giving directions, the two can work successfully. America, because of materialism and ignorance of God, was blind, and India, because of foreign invasions, poverty, and misinterpretations of Vedic knowledge, was lame. America had technological advancement and wealth, and India had spiritual knowledge. The job of the Krishna consciousness movement was to combine the two strengths and uplift the world. And one practical application would be the Bombay Pandal Festival. Prabhupada divided the work, assigning Shyamasundar to publicity, Tamal Krishna to the Pandal arrangements, Giriraj to fundraising, and Madhudwisha to the scheduled programs on stage. Catching Prabhupada's spirit of shooting the rhinoceros, Shyamasundar organized a massive publicity campaign with giant posters and banners strung across the streets announcing His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada will speak in English language about the science of God. Prasadam distribution and bhajan singing will be led by his American and European bhaktas. Hare Krishna Festival at Cross Maidan, March the 25th to April the 4th. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. I don't know what verse it is. I'm not prepared for it, so I don't even know. '52. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 9, Text 52. Sava adikato dadyan Sava adigato dadyan ashvibhyam brahmanishkalam ashvibhyam brahmanishkalam yadva ashvashiro nama yadva ashvashiro nama Tayoramartam Vyatam Tayor Amaratam Padyat Sava Adikato Dadyan Ashvibhyam Brahmanishkalam Yadva Ashvashiro Nama Tayor Amaratam Vadyat Sava Adigato Dadyan Ashvibhyam Brahmanishkalam Yadva Ashvashiro Nama Tayor Amaratam Vadyat Sava Adikato Dadyan Ashvibhyam Brahmanishkalam Yadva Ashvashiro Nama. Saha, he, va, certainly, adigataha, having obtained, dadyan, dadyancha, ashvibhyam, to the two Ashwini Kumars, Brahma, spiritual knowledge, Nishkalam, pure, Yatva, by which, Ashvashiraha, Ashvashira, Nama, named, Tayo, of the two, Amaratam, liberation in one's life, Vyadat, awarded. Translation. That saintly Dadyancha, who is also known as Dadichi, personally assimilated the spiritual science and then delivered it to the Ashwini Kumaras. It is said that Dadyancha gave them mantras through the head of a horse. Therefore, the mantras are called Ashvashira. After obtaining the mantras of spiritual science from Dadichi, the Ashwini Kumaras became Jivan Mukta, liberated even in this life. Please repeat. That saintly Dadyancha, who is also known as Dadichi, personally assimilated the spiritual science and then delivered it to the Ashwini Kumaras. It is said that Dadyancha gave them mantras to the head of a horse. Therefore, the mantras are called Ashvashira. After obtaining the mantras of spiritual science from Dadichi, the Ashwini Kumaras became Jivan Mukta, liberated even in this life. Purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The following story is narrated by many acharyas in their commentaries. I won't say the Sanskrit. The great saint Dadichi had perfect knowledge of how to perform fruitive activities, and he had advanced spiritual knowledge as well. Knowing this, the Ashwini Kumaras once approached him and begged him to instruct them in spiritual science, Brahma Vidya. Dadichi Muni replied, I am now engaged in arranging sacrifices for fruitive activities. Come back some time later. When the Ashwini Kumaras left, Indra, the king of heaven, approached Dadichi and said, My dear Muni, the Ashwini Kumaras are only physicians. Please do not instruct them in spiritual science. If you impart the spiritual science to them, despite my warning, I shall punish you by cutting off your head. After warning the Dichi in this way, Indra returned to heaven. The Ashwini Kumaras, who understood Indra's desires, returned and begged the Dichi for Brahma Vidya. When the great saint Dadichi informed them of Indra's threat, the Ashwini Kumaras replied, "Let us first cut off your head and replace it with the head of a horse. You can instruct Brahma Vidya through the horse's head, and when Indra returns and cuts off that head, we shall reward you and restore your original head." Since Dadichi had promised to impart Brahma Vidya to the Ashwini Kumaras, he agreed to the proposal. Therefore, because Dadichi imparted Brahma Vidya through the mouth of a horse, this Brahma Vidya is also known as Ashvashira. Om Jnanatam Randasya Kananjanashalataya Chakshuranmutam Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadam Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'm not really prepared for this. I'm not prepared for this class, so I'm not really sure what I'm going to say. So be prepared. So this chapter is describing. So I think at this point the demigods have approached Adichi to ask him to give his body up. Is that right? So so this personality called Dadichi, it seems like he's very he's got a lot of spiritual knowledge that he's able to give, and even the demigods like Ashwini Kumars are approaching him for this. It's called Brahma Vidya, the spiritual science. And it's interesting that Indra doesn't want him to give them the science of spiritual life, because he says they're only physicians. So please don't instruct them in spiritual science. So we can start to realize how important the spiritual science is, and how fortunate we are that we actually have this spiritual science. And even the demigods are looking for this spiritual science of the self. And they've been, like here, Indra was ready to cut off Dadichi's head if he gave them spiritual knowledge. So it's so valuable. And here we are, we have Prabhupada has given us everything basically on a plate. He's given us all the Bhagavatam, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, all the spiritual science that we could actually be looking for. He's given it to us perfectly arranged, perfectly written, so that we can understand this. And we are not on the level of demigods. We're not, personally speaking. We've in the material world, we've been conditioned by so many material bad habits and sinful activities, and here we are. We're getting this spiritual science, although we're not qualified for it. And there was one story where Prabhupada was saying that only by pious activities or piety can one come to devotional service. And then one devotee said to him, "Well, Prabhupada, I've not done any pious activities in this lifetime. I've only done sinful activities. So how have I got devotional service?" And then Prabhupada just kind of sat for a few moments, and then he says, I am your pious credits. I have given you the piety. I'm the qualification. So we can see that although, we haven't done maybe that many pious activities ourselves, because of Prabhupada's mercy, we're actually getting this. He's giving us the piety to actually understand all this spiritual knowledge. And it's so like, it's inconceivable how we're the ones who have received it. There's so many living entities in the world, who are, searching or, absorbed in material life. They have no idea what spiritual life is for. And yet here we are, just a handful of us in this temple in Scotland who have actually received it and are actually practicing it to this degree. So it's not a small thing. It's a very rare, valuable gift, and Prabhupada has given us that. He's made sacrifices so that we can have this knowledge ourselves. There's so much in the Bhagavatam to describe descriptions of spiritual knowledge, how to practice it. But if Prabhupada hadn't come, if he had just given us the books, if he hadn't given us the procedure of chanting Hare Krishna and the whole morning program, we wouldn't have been able to work it out from reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is what we're supposed to do. We would have read the Bhagavatam and just thought it was a nice storybook and then just put it down. We wouldn't have actually understood that the purpose of it is to actually chant Hare Krishna and to practice devotional service through the 9 processes of devotional service, and to hear and chant and remember the Lord, and all the different processes of devotional service that we're practicing, deity worship and preaching. We wouldn't have worked it out. We would have just kind of, maybe it would have been very vague, whatever we would have come up with. So Srila Prabhupada has given us such a systematic approach to spiritual life. It's a whole science. It's not just some sort of vague, superstitious thing. It is mystical, but it's a process, and we can only understand it through Srila Prabhupada's teachings. We could have read so many other books, but because Prabhupada, his aim was to give us pure love for Krishna, then that's what we're actually going to be able to receive from these books if we actually practice it properly. That was Prabhupada's goal. And so if Prabhupada had come to the West and he would have told us, just chant Hare Krishna, and he didn't give us these books, then we wouldn't know how to actually practice devotional service properly. We would have chanted Hare Krishna, but how do we get free from those offenses that we're chanting with offense? If we're chanting with offenses, it's only by reading Srimad Bhagavatam we actually understand how to get free from offensive chanting, how to avoid offenses. And through these stories, we see what we should and what we shouldn't do, how to get free, how to avoid offenses, or how to get free from offenses, till we actually be able to chant purely. So, without the books, we could be chanting Hare Krishna, but to actually chant purely, then we have to read Srila Prabhupada's books, the Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, so we can actually develop the proper understanding of how to chant purely with a proper mood. And there's an interesting thing. I've been attending this head Pujari Sangha every Monday for the last few weeks, and there was one thing Malati Mataji said. She said that Prabhupada said that the greatest danger to this movement is, can anyone think what the greatest danger to the movement would be? Any idea?
That danger comes from within more than from outside.
That's one of the things we could say, that the movement can't be destroyed from the outside, but from the inside. That's true. There's one other thing that he said. He says that the greatest danger would be when we will start to create or manufacture the process of deity worship. That was very interesting, because I was thinking that I didn't think that that would be such a major issue, but that's what he said. So Srila Prabhupada gave us a certain system of deity worship. And so, in one sense, we shouldn't manufacture anything, really. We should actually accept what is in the scriptures and what Prabhupada has given us instead of manufacturing our own sort of way of doing things. But especially with deity worship, that's one of the things he said. So I found that very interesting, that we have to actually keep everything as it's been given to us, as it is. Otherwise, things will get watered down, and in like 50 years' time or 100 years' time, if things get watered down and not followed properly, then we don't know what the deity standards will be. We don't know what the level of, chanting Hare Krishna will be. We don't know what's going to happen. So it's really up to the devotees now to document everything, to make sure things will get followed as it is, and so it doesn't get changed. And has anybody got any questions? Yes.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So I think I'm just a little bit confused because one moment we were talking about Vritrasura in this pastime, and now suddenly I don't know what's happening. So maybe you could just clear things up for me, please.
Okay, so it would have been good if I'd prepared for this. So, yeah, if you can explain what's happened to this.
So after there was this, what's his name? Trishta? Tvashta. Yes. So it all started actually from Indra disrespecting Brihaspati. Brihaspati entered, is a demigod, and the sage of the demigods. He entered, and Indra didn't offer respects. So Brihaspati left, and Indra kind of realized, okay, I committed offense, and Brihaspati wanted to teach a lesson, so he did kind of leave, although Indra to some extent felt regretful. So then they had to find another priest, because demons are getting strong, when they don't have a good priest, they become more powerful. So it was then recommended, I think, by Brahma to get Tvashta. Oh, Tvashta is the father.
Vishwarup.
Oh, Vishwarup, sorry. Yeah, Vishwarup. But Vishwarup had some relatives among demons. So when he was performing sacrifices for demigods, he also giving some share to demons. And when Indra found this out, he kind of cut his head off. So Tvashta, the father, got really upset with this, and he called, for demon to kill Indra. And this is where Vritrasura has appeared, and he was very, very powerful, and really shaking everything up, scaring demigods and Indra. So then demigods headed by Indra started to pray to Lord Narayan, and is going through many, many prayers. And then Narayan answers to those prayers. Narayan somehow, I don't know, it appears or something somehow to them and starts answering prayers. And this is where the Dichi comes in, because he says, and then later on we hear a little bit more, he says that you need to approach the Dichi to solve the problem. The Dichi's body is very powerful, and later on we'll find out, because of that very powerful body, they should ask from the Dichi for his body, and then from his bones will make an arrow or something that will be able to kill Vritrasura. So that's kind of just it.
So is this just giving a description of the Dichi, what he did in the past? Like, yeah. And the Dichi is a very special personality because he was willing to give up his body to help demigods. I mean, somebody approached us, to do such a thing. It would be very difficult, but he was prepared to do that because he understood that he's not the body. He could sacrifice that body for the welfare of others. So this is actually shows how, you know, a spiritually minded person is willing to sacrifice his own comforts and his own, you know, his own self to help others, for the welfare of others. But we have to be on that level, not so artificially trying to do that, but out of compassion. Like Srila Prabhupada, out of compassion, he came to give us Krishna consciousness, and he went through so many difficulties and discomforts and inconveniences to do it. But that sacrifice was for our benefit. So the more advanced we are, the more we will be able to do that. So we can see that Dichi is very advanced, so that he was prepared to do that. And seems like Indra's got quite a lot of part to play in this chapter. But we see that the Lord is always willing to help his devotees when they're in danger. So we see that the demigods were afraid of this Vritrasura. Vritrasura was actually a great devotee as well. He was just in the form of a demon, but he was actually a great devotee from the past. I don't know if it will explain that later on. But Vritrasura was he had to take that form of a demon because of a curse, but internally he was a great devotee, and we can see from his prayers when he gets killed, that or just before he gets killed, he's, you know, he was thinking that, you know, Indra's actually Indra's going to lose out. Vritrasura is going to go back to Godhead, but Indra's the one who's going to lose out. You know, he's the one who's going to be stuck in the material world. And it just shows how the Lord protects. Like, although Vritrasura was cursed to become a demon, the Lord protected him still, and in that body of a demon, he actually gave up that. At the end, he gave up that demonic mentality and went back to Godhead. So even if devotees make mistakes or they've committed some offense and they fall down to a lower level, still the Lord protects and helps them gradually rise back up again. So this is the Lord's mercy. So we can learn so many meanings from these stories. How spiritual life, there may be some problems, maybe mistakes, maybe difficulties, but the Lord protects us and he guides us so that we can learn the lessons and go back to him. So that's because we're in the human form, it's like natural for us to make mistakes and become influenced by the modes of material nature, become offensive. You know, it's like this is part of our conditioning, but still the Lord is very kind, and he helps us along, by teaching us what we should and shouldn't do, and helps us to get free from these, pride or anger or all these different things that are stopping our obstacles in our path back to Godhead. Somehow he has to remove them, and sometimes it's a painful process. It's not very nice to go through difficulties, but those difficulties are actually helping us. There's a nice story I just recently read in the book by Dhirashanta Maharaj, and it's a story of a goat that was stuck in a well, and the people were thought there's no point trying to get the goat out of the well. So just they were throwing dirt onto the goat to kind of bury him in the well. But the goat, when the dirt was put on his back, he would deflect the dirt and step on top of the dirt and rise higher. So as the dirt was getting put in, he was stepping on top of the dirt and getting higher and higher. And then he finally came out of the well. So we can see that when dirt gets thrown on us, we can deflect it and rise higher. So this is what we have to do. Whenever there's some problems, we have to step over the problem and rise higher. So this is we have to figure out how to do this. Now the goat worked it out, so I'm sure we can work it out. So it's like we have to use our intelligence, see what are we to learn from this situation, what is Krishna teaching us, what have we to kind of gain from this. And sometimes we don't see it as Krishna's mercy. It's only when we look back and we think, yeah, that was actually Krishna's mercy. I had to go through that purification. Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to become strong in my Krishna consciousness. So and we have to become humble. So it's not an easy process, but this going back to Godhead is removing all these different conditionings that we have, so that we can go forward. And so if we see the bright side, if we see Krishna's hand in it, then we'll see that Krishna's not doing this as like a punishment. He's actually trying to help us to get better. He's actually helping us to rise from this, from our, our conditioned state, so that we can become free from all these anarthas. So sometimes the process is difficult, and sometimes it's painful, but we've all had problems with toothache, but it's only when the tooth is taken out that we actually get a relief from the pain. So sometimes we have to go through some pain to get, at the end of it, there's some relief. So Krishna's hand's always there, and it's a kind hand. Krishna's always kind to his devotees, and sometimes he needs to be cruel to be kind. So, but we still have to see that Krishna's kindness is behind it. He's doing this out of his kindness. Is there any more questions or comments?
Straight from the horse's mouth.
Yeah.
Literally.
Yeah.
Did she deliver the mantras when he was? So I guess another thing is like that you can take knowledge from some difficult place or unlikely place as well. Because in one sense, when you speak somebody, if you see somebody giving a lecture with a horse's mouth, you may be kind of put off a little bit, but if it's Vedic knowledge, then one should take it.
Yeah, the Lord can instruct. He can instruct through anybody, really, if we are ready to, if we're willing to accept. There's that story of in the 11th canto of that devotee who said he has 24 gurus, Avanti Brahmana, and he describes all the different gurus, and but it's not that like his gurus were not all doing the right thing. His gurus were also, some of them were teaching him what not to do, like the fish, because of his sense of smell, his attachment to eating, attachment to the tongue, then it gets caught by the bait. So sometimes the teaching can be what not to do, not just what to do. So, and there's the story of the wasp and the insect. The insect is got caught in the trap, and the wasp is ready to kill it, but it's just meditating on the wasp, and then the next life it becomes a wasp, to show us that if whatever we meditate at the time of death, we're going to, or he was just so meditating on the body of the wasp, that he ended up becoming a wasp in his next life. So there's so many gurus that he had to show what we shouldn't do, what we should do. So we can see that throughout life. We can see so many scenarios, what we should and shouldn't do. So many different personalities can show us what we should and shouldn't do, so we can learn from them. So it's so it's up to us, if we're prepared to be able to see and learn from everybody. Everybody can teach us if we're humble enough to accept that.
It was interesting. The morning walks started when Prabhupada was not feeling well, and this doctor came. He was drunk, or he smelled from last night or something, and he said, this Swami or whatever you called, this priest, he doesn't walk enough, he doesn't move enough. He's sitting too much in one place. He should walk. And Prabhupada took it that this is Krishna speaking through this drunk man. And this is where the morning walk started. He did morning walks every single day since up to that time.
Yeah. I mean, it's not that everything that people see out there that we accept, like, Krishna's, it must be Krishna's arrangement, that this person's telling me to smoke or something like this. We don't like accept every single thing, but generally, at least from the devotees, we can, at least we can accept from the devotees what to do, what we should and shouldn't do. And if we're more advanced, then we can see if this is Maya or Krishna, if somebody else who's not a devotee tells us something, But Prabhupada's a Paramahamsa, so he could see, Krishna's hand in everything. He could understand. But we have to accept whatever's favorable for our Krishna consciousness. And know what's not favorable for our Krishna consciousness. So we accept what's favorable and we reject what's unfavorable. That's how we can judge if something is actually good for us or not, generally. But yeah, it's a nice point, because Prabhupada, although he could take gold from a dirty place, and he could basically find the nectar even in a dirty place. So Prabhupada had that consciousness. So, did you want to say something else?
Just another amazing thing how Krishna fulfills so many things with one activity. I was just thinking recently, like, even to Jagannatha Mayapushashi, like as a community, we all come and we pray from different angles of vision, and like, only God, can be able to fulfill something, like it could be like so varied, one person is this and another, even, like, let's say, what is the best for the community? Let's say, everybody comes and prays to the Jagannatha Mayapushashi, please let this happen for the community, for the best of it. And I don't know, it could be like a completely, almost like opposite thing. So like how you, if, Krishna, if you think it must be so genius, not, it must be, he is, to be able to fulfill the aspirations and prayers. So devotees, like we're praying, for example, this every day, that, what's the prayer that we recite? Please make us whatever mercies, so this God may flourish in the numbers of happy devotees, blessings Lakshmi, especially love. So it's like, we all kind of praying for this, and I know how it's gonna come, we don't really know. But Krishna will reciprocate with this prayer. And even in this situation, it's like on both sides are devotees actually. One is a pure devotee, others are mixed devotees, and it's like they're like against each other. Ultimately, there is like so many things to be learned. Or Jai and Vijay was another thing. Kumaras are there, and then the Jai and Vijay, the all devotees of Krishna. and some purpose of the Lord just gets fulfilled in that situation, which is not so visible to begin with.
Yeah. So sometimes we have to wait and see what is the reason why something has happened. And we only realize that once, it's happened. After a long time, we see why it happened, why it had to happen, and why Krishna arranged it like this, because it would be for the benefit. When we're going through the hardship, then we don't see it as Krishna's mercy usually, unless we're very advanced. But then, retrospect, when we look back and we think, actually, that had to happen, because that would have caused me a lot more problems in the future if it hadn't happened. You see, so sometimes we don't see it as Krishna's mercy, but when we look back and say, yeah, actually, it was Krishna's mercy. It's like that story of the king who lost his finger in was it? Yeah, that was Krishna's mercy. So, yeah, and from Krishna's perspective, he's not just seeing our little world; he's seeing a lot, he's seeing everybody. So he's seeing how this is going to affect this person, that person, this person. So he's seeing it on a different level, and for the future benefit of everybody. So we're only seeing our little world. Krishna's seeing everyone's world. So, yes.
I wonder if you have any stories that you could tell from Shishikudantama Shashi and the experience that you've had here, kind of on this topic, Krishna fulfilling desires for the community, etc.
Yeah, well, I've been praying for pujaris, and it's taken a war to bring a pujaris here. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have any. Well, Sudarshan Prabhu came, and it was just like perfect arrangement. One pujari went out the pujari department, and another pujari plus Ukrainian pujaris came. It was like, I mean, I couldn't have even if it was up to us, how could we arrange it in such a perfect way? But Krishna timed it perfectly. It was like, it was just such a perfect arrangement that one pujari goes out and another 3 pujaris come, sort of thing. So it was like, and I mean, it's just amazing how it all worked. And it's just so much more, is getting done now than before, so much more cleaning in pujari department. And there's so many things that are getting, covered now than that we were struggling with before. So it's such a big, perfect arrangement. So there's so many times like this, the things like this happen. I'm wondering what's going to happen, and then all of a sudden, we've got a pujari that does all the shalagrams now as well, because that was a big anxiety in my head, how I'm going to keep this going, massaging and oiling all the shilas and keeping them clean. That was a big problem. But now every day or every few days, Gandaki Prabhu does a tray of shilas, so they're kept clean. So, yeah, it's just a wonderful arrangement by the Lord. And it's not like I'm doing anything, it's just happened by Krishna's mercy. So it just shows that, if we pray for the right things, and Krishna will help us. He'll help fulfill those desires, the spiritual desires especially. So we need to be sincere and pray sincerely to the deities to help us. And not just pray for those things, but pray to be able to be qualified and to be able to accept those things as well. Because we may not be able to, we may pray to get free from material desires, but then we're not be able to cope with it, because we have material desires and we don't want them taken away. So we have to understand that we have to be careful what we pray for. We have to be ready to accept what the Lord wants then. So, just in case.
And also at one point we identified some 3 goals that you like to cultivate, although it wasn't like a very specific, but just at least in a broad sense, more devotees, more happy devotees, and also like a financial stability. So kind of financially we are more stable, although it's a crisis. We are kind of doing not bad. There's a lot more devotees as well, like the festivals getting like 140 people every festival approximately, and there's a lot more people in the community, and it just feels like we're coming to the point that like a happy devotees has to become like a at least I think top priority, and if it's not top priority, top 3 anyway. Like this kind of focus, it just have to be in order to go forward. And then it has to become like a top priority, or a second priority, whichever. I mean, ideally top priority. So Krishna has been reciprocating with this prayer, and I think he is continuing to do so.
Is that okay? Anything else? Oh, time to finish. It's 1:30. Anybody want to share any stories from themselves, how Krishna's reciprocated and fulfilled their desires and helped them? Or
Yeah, I can think of something. It was sometime earlier this year. There was a festival on, and I can't remember which festival it was, but I hadn't seen this festival yet. I wanted to hear about it and be in the temple and experience it. But at the same time, I'd been asked to go into the kitchen, which I was also very excited about, because I wanted to, serve and help in the kitchen. But I was torn between thinking I'll miss out on the festival or I'll miss out on the kitchen. So either way, I'm missing out. But then I think I brought it up to Raghunath. Then what had already been arranged is that it was a 4-day festival, 4-day event, and 2 of the days I was needed in the kitchen, and 2 of the days I wasn't needed in the kitchen, and this was without me like actually trying to do anything about it. So yeah, that was very nice.
that's nice.
There's also another thing. It was around the same time that I was kind of struggling with something very particular, which I don't need to go into. But whilst I was going through this difficulty, 3 classes in a row, the class was focused on this topic. And then I was also reading about this thing in the Bhagavad Gita, which was helping me through this difficulty. And the same day, I heard Jagannatha Prabhu reading the same verse on the phone whilst he was doing a reading. So I was just like, that was really nice.
Yeah. So Krishna does. I've experienced that many times. That sometimes if I'm reading something, that topic will come up in another book, and also in a lecture, the same thing, the same theme, and it's like, how can that possibly be? Like 3 things in one topic. Not me searching for it; it just happens that I read it. It's just so amazing how Krishna arranges everything so precisely. What we need to hear, and yeah, it's so we can see from these incidents that we're not. Krishna's there. He's looking after us. He's directing us, and he directs us through Guru Shastra and Sadhu. So through the scriptures, through the devotees, that's how he directs us. That's how we can hear him. So Krishna is present through that sound vibration, and we just have to be focused and accept that Krishna is directing us through this person, or through the Srimad Bhagavatam, or through, we see it as Krishna's directing us. Then we'll appreciate that Krishna is looking after us always. He's protecting us and guiding us. So Yeah, we'll see it more and more as we go on in spiritual life. It's Krishna's hands there always, and the more we realize that, the more we feel like, Krishna loves us already. We have to reciprocate and show our love to him. Is there anything else? Yes. Laura.
A comment from Laura online, and she says, I feel Krishna's hand in things that have happened in my life lately. He's made way for better things.
Nice. Yeah. That's what it means to be Krishna conscious, that we're seeing Krishna's hand and seeing how he's helping us in our spiritual life. And, the more we are conscious of Krishna, the more things will be, we'll be able to accept things as, even when difficult things happen, we'll accept it as Krishna's mercy. We may not be on the level of Queen Kunti, who's, praying for calamities, again and again. But, when we go through difficulties, that's when we actually, if we're really sincere, we'll take more shelter of Krishna and we'll become closer to Krishna. And that's what Krishna wants. He wants us to come closer to him. So it might take difficulties to help us come closer to him. Because when we're in our comfort zone, we're maybe not generally so much focused on Krishna. We're more focused on our comforts. But it's when we go through difficulties, that's when we really take shelter of Krishna. And that's when we see Krishna's mercy coming. A lot of the times, we see that if we're distributing Srila Prabhupada's books and Sankirtan, that's when I found so many amazing things happen. Some that's when we see Krishna's magic, Krishna's hand, is when we're in Sankirtan. I mean, we can still see Krishna's hand when we're peeling potatoes and things, but it's really when we're really going out and we're really distributing Prabhupada's, we're sacrificing and we're giving the mercy to others. That's when we see Krishna's hand. Can anyone remember any stories in Sankirtan that you see that wasn't you, that was Krishna? Do you have some story? No? Should I tell a story then? There was one time I was standing on, it was on the Waverley Bridge in Edinburgh, and I was doing Sankirtan, and this man had come and he said he was going to come back and give me £10 for the CD or the book or something, Bhagavad Gita, I think it was. And at that time, in those days, we used to stop a bit earlier and go and beg milk, butter and sugar. We used to ask people to go into shops to buy milk, butter and sugar. And so I thought, oh, if I go up to do that, then I'm going to miss this person who's going to come and take a book and give a donation. So as I was just standing there thinking, just at that moment, this homeless person came up to me, one of these beggars in the street. He says, do you want me to go up and get you some milk, butter and sugar? I was just so it was like a homeless person on the street asking me if I would like to buy me some milk, butter and sugar. And I said, yes, please. So he went up to this Mama said, the shop. He bought me a pint of milk and a block of butter and a bag of sugar. And in that time, that man had come and taken a book. And if I'd gotten up, I would have missed him. So I was thinking, it was just like, I couldn't have arranged it so perfectly myself, but of all persons, a homeless person comes up to me and asks me if he could buy me some milk, butter and sugar. That's a miracle, isn't it? If that happens, just as you're thinking it. So Krishna can arrange so many amazing things. If we're trying to focus to please him and we're trying to do our service, then so many amazing things can happen. That's just one of the things. There's so many other things, longer stories that I can tell you, but there's so many instances that happened. And it was just so, or Krishna makes you say the right thing to the right person, and they give you a big donation. You know, it's like I would normally not say that, but it just to the right person, you know, it just happens. So we have to see Krishna is really inspiring us. He's actually inspiring them and inspiring us to walk in the same part of the street and meet and, you know, exchange. It's just an amazing, it's not a coincidence. It's just an amazing arrangement made by Krishna. So, yeah, we have to see that Krishna is really, you know, with us the whole time. He's just waiting for us to approach him or, you know, take shelter of him. Is that okay? Shall I stop? Okay. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
Iskon Guru Vrinda ki
Jai.
jai. Shri Prabhupada ki
Jai.
jai.
Haribo. A great Jagannatha Priya Devi Dasi Mataji ki.
Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai.